Hey everybody, just gonna do this way. I feel like you haven't seen and heard enough of me through a screen over the last 48 hours, so I just want to kind of get back to it, make us feel special. So, I'm just gonna go through the two PowerPoints really quickly. Some of it we'll do in class, some of it will be done through here, but that way I can walk through it and tell you guys what you need to know. So, um, started with neuroscience of memory, just like some very simple basic, like the building blocks of it. Your procedural memories is where your are stored in your cerebellum. That's like tying your shoes, riding a bike, things like that. Like the muscle memory type deal, procedural stuff is in your cerebellum. Short-term memories, prefrontal, like in the very front of your frontal lobe. Again, fear is associated with amygdala. Um, and from there, semantics, episodic, long-term, which we'll talk about in the next PowerPoint. Your temporal lobes going to be getting into your hippocampus, your frontal lobe. So it's really all over. But it's just those procedural short-term memories do have semi-specific places, and after that, it's kind of everywhere. Hippocampus there'll be a video to help show the role of the hippocampus. Formation, you don't need to write this down. 4E-BP2, don't worry about. I just know that there is technically like a protein that helps, or we believe it is thought to help control it. That's like deep science, but just background information. This video, I think we'll likely watch in class, but if not, the link is there. Getting to the role of the hippocampus with Henry Malazan, which we'll talk about regardless. If we have time, we'll watch it in class though. So the big thing, again, I would just get down, write 1, 2, 3, procedural short-term fear, ignore, no notes, we'll watch it in class. This one I would get down. I would get this slide down. So retrograde amnesia and anterior grade amnesia. And basically all it works is like you have a traumatic brain injury. Boom. Retrograde amnesia, you lose all of those memories that was previous to the head injury. So if you're 18 years old, boom, bop, bang, retrograde amnesia, you lose essentially the last 17 years of your life. Traumatic brain injury, boom, bop, bang, anterior grade amnesia, right? Then you have difficulty creating new memories. So retrograde, old, easy way to remember it. Anterior grade is going to be the opposite. So the new memories, it's just either the loss of old or the difficulty to form new. Very straightforward. And then next. Good. So, memory. What is memory? All that good fun stuff. So, memory, the persistence of learning over time through encoding, storage, retrieval of information. Right? Just like when we talk about like intelligence is learning something and applying it, memory is just learning something and then storing it. And then eventually retrieval, pulling it back out. So that's where you see they're like getting information into our brain is known as encoding. Retaining it, remembering it is storage. And then retrieving is when you have to, pull it back out. So I would just get the definition. Encoding, storage, retrieval, frankly, seems like very common sense to me. So if you feel like you don't need to write down what that means, you don't need to. If you do, write it down. It's good to remember. All right, so various theories we're going to go over really quickly, sensory, short-term, and long-term throughout the rest of the PowerPoint. So you don't really need to get those down now, but those three, sensory, short-term, long-term, is what we are going to be talking about. So sensory memory, these are your first levels of memory, right? Just like in everything, right? Your senses are the first sign, right? The first thing. So any sound wave that comes in, right, starts as a random, right, sound wave that hits your ear electrical impulse then into your temporal lobe, right, becomes English, and you can understand what I'm saying right now, right? But everything always starts with your senses. So, right, everything again hits our nervous system first before going to anything else. So visual sensory memory is called iconic memory. Iconic. Only stays for a couple of seconds before then just like, so it says mass, right? It's just essentially getting like copied over through something else. Right? If you just, right, kind of when we talked about senses in general, right, you're constantly bombarded with like just so much visual stimuli if your eyes are open. Even if you're not paying attention to it, you still see a lot of stuff out of your peripheral vision, or like right now, like my dog's like right over here. I'm looking at the screen, I'm looking at this, but I can still see him. I can still see my TV over there, the bookshelf or whatever, right? My kitchen right over here. So like, even though like I'm not paying attention to it, it's still there. So everything is getting filtered through that lens at first, and then it's either going to go into your short-term, long-term memory, or it's going to go away, right? But everything starts there on your senses. I'm going to skip those slides. We'll do those in class. Echoic memory, echo, ear, echo, echoic memory. It's similar, it's the same, right, as iconic, but instead of visual, it's auditory. Echoic memory does tend to last a little bit longer, so it's just because there's a little bit less, right? There's typically less auditory sensations and stimuli coming in, so it tends to last a little bit longer because you're just hearing less things. Yeah. Short-term memory. Here's what you need to know, short-term memory. So 12, it's really like 10 to 30 seconds long. And basically after that, the phrase, right, if you don't use it, you lose it. It's 10 to 30 seconds long. If you do nothing with that information within those first 30 seconds or so, in one ear, out the other, gone. And that's because we are so much constantly bombarded with stimuli and things coming in, or especially like in a matter of a school day. When all of that stuff's happening, we can't just continuously have a million things running around in our head. Right, it's going to get to that magic number 7 there at the bottom. We can really only have about 7 competing thoughts in our head at any one time, and especially in regards to like trying to remember stuff or pay attention to something. So that's where, right, the idea is I try to, right, when we're doing something like this, like in class, like put the slide up and then I'll just shut up and say nothing. So there's less, ideally, going on up here. It's you looking at the words, thinking about the words, and writing them and thinking about them, because it helps you focus in and helps your brain actually turn those words on the screen into your own memory, right? Through your sight, your thought, your writing, and seeing your hand write it. That all helps your memory. If there's more and more additional stimuli going on, that is what hurts your memory. So I know I've explained it before, but that's actually the science behind it, and that's why. So that magic number 7, it's plus or minus 2, but it just gets into, we really can only have several competing thoughts at once in our head, and then as new things come in, if you're not working with it, it's gone, because our brain only has so much like working memory. It's kind of like RAM on a computer, right? You can have a ton of memory storage, but you only have so much like working memory at any one time. That's essentially how our brains work too. So you can overload like the working piece of your brain if you're trying to do too much. So kind of like less is more in that regard. And then so what's known as the cocktail party effect. So that is especially in regards to like sensory memory into short term and then possibly into long term. So if you're in a very loud classroom, or you're in the lunchroom or things like that, where especially in like loud settings, even though you can be surrounded with a ton of especially like auditory stimuli, But if you're sitting at the lunch table, you can hear your friend across the table like speaking, and you can really focus on them, even though you're picking up a lot of other things from around the room. Your brain can actively tune that stuff out to then help focus on what you want to pay attention to. So we do have some control over our senses in that regard, and especially in like trying to hone in and focus. It's the same reason, by the way, like if you're driving and you're like semi lost and you need to like figure out, oh crap, where's my next turn? Like you turn the radio down and stuff like that. It's because you want to like lessen the amount of stuff going on in your head so you can focus better. All right, next is working memory. So working memory is a better understanding of short-term memory. So you can see like with the graph, the chart, sensory into short-term, but really working memory is going to make what's short-term into long-term. So, right, that's what I was talking about in regards to you have to do something with your short-term memory in order to make it meaningful and then into your long-term. If you don't do anything, it's gone, and it's gone forever. Short-term working memory is right, you have to work with the material, whether it's discussing it, writing it down, taking part in an activity. You have to do something with that information, and it can't just be passive like reading. Like reading your notes over to study is better than doing nothing, but just silently reading is a very passive way to like work with that information, and you're trying to remember it, right? It'd be better to create note cards or FaceTime with a friend and like quiz each other back and forth, right? Doing something like physical with that information is the best way to help understand it. And it's the best way to build it into your long-term memory so you actually remember it for longer than, right, the night before the test and then gone. The more you work with the material, the longer you work with its material, and the more active you're with it, the better you're going to remember it, and then the stronger your retrieval process of that information will become. So it strengthens your memory in a lot of different ways. All right, I'm going to end this one and then just do a second video to keep them kind of short and chunked out there. So I will see you in video 2.